Welcome back to IDP Plus Bets. I'm Johnny, your host tonight. Axton's not able to make it. First and foremost, want to say happy holidays to everybody out there. And secondly, good luck to all those fantasy managers in the playoffs this upcoming weekend. After going through the DraftKings prop bets, looking at tackle props on the individual defensive player side, I came up with 5 bets I like this week. First, want to say before I get into it, if you or anybody you know has a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Always stick to your limits and bet smart. Don't bet anything more than you can afford to lose. So, rolling right into the first pick, highest odds. First is going to be Brandon Jones over 5.5 combined tackles at minus 145 versus Indianapolis this weekend. He's hit this in 7 out of 12 games. It was going to be 8 out of 12, but he left the last game he had played before the bye week at 56% snaps, and he had 3 tackles to that point. So, simple math, he would have been good, or at least close to, on this 6 combined tackle mark again. So, it would have been 8 out of 12. But as it is this week, as it stands, he faces a Colts defense that's bottom 3 in terms of allowing tackles to linebackers. But when we're looking at safeties, it's a different story. Indianapolis is actually a top 8 matchup, allowing tackles to the safety position as a whole. To both safeties combined, of course, they allow 14.3 tackles to the safety position over the last 3. And if you play fantasy football, or you keep in line with these IDP bets, you know that Brandon Jones is the breadwinner when it comes to tackles of that backfield there in Denver. They have a guy named PJ Locke who was looking really good upcoming this season. Just really hasn't panned out for him. He's dealt with injuries himself. Doesn't seem to have the high floor tackle volume that Brandon Jones does there. And Brandon Jones, keep in mind that not a lot of many games that he's played. He's only played 1 game in a top 10 matchup to tackles for safeties. The other one, he had another opportunity, and it was the best matchup to Atlanta. I believe it was week 12. He missed that game. That Atlanta gives up the most tackles to safety. So he missed his only good opportunity, but 7 tackles in that other good matchup, top 10 matchup versus Pittsburgh early on in the season. So, when he has a good matchup, he does excel. Brandon Jones as a whole this year, we can all pretty much agree that he's been a pretty standout safety and IDP player. And specifically for the Broncos, he's been tied for the leading tackler, him and Cody Barton. So usually for a safety, you're not leading the team in tackles, only like, maybe not even Nick Cross, but Buddabaker's in that category too. So Brandon Jones, I think he makes good on this. It's not great odds, minus 145, but 6 tackles should be pretty easy here for him in a good matchup. So I expect the Colts to be down and trailing at Denver, which means it's good game flow for Brandon Jones there. So that's my first pick of the week. The next one I'm moving into is Nakobedean over 8.5 tackles at minus 135 versus Pittsburgh. He's hit this marker in 6 out of 13 games, but he has hit on 3 out of his last 4. So, as a whole, a little bit under 50%. And 3 of the last 4 is a pretty good stat. Now, if you know Nakobedean as a whole, he started out slow, was injured, didn't really have a full-time role for a little bit there. So the numbers don't really tell the whole story, but he has had 40 combined tackles over his last 4 games. As we all know, quick dirty math, that's a good average of 10. So you combine that with the mixture of him getting the best matchup you could ask for when it comes to tackles for linebackers. He gets Pittsburgh this week. They're allowing 20.2 combined tackles to linebackers per game on average. And as a matter of fact, their last 3 has been even juicier. Last 3 games, Pittsburgh's given up 22.7, which leads the league again in tackles to linebackers. So Zach Bond, Nakobedean, both in great positions here. Zach Bond's line's a little bit higher, 9.5. Maybe you prefer that. He may be a safer 10 double-digit tackle, but Nakobedean, all we need is 9 here. He's hit that in 2 of the last 3 games. Both matchups have been bad matchups. I'm sorry, 2 out of the 3 of those hits have been bad matchups. So Nakobe did it in bad matchups. This is the best one you could ask for here in Week 15. So I think he's going to be good pretty easily here on this 8.5 marker. Once again, Nakobe over 8.5 combined tackles, minus 135 versus Pittsburgh. For my third pick, I'm going to stay in the same game, and I'm going to look at a position I don't really look at too often. That's defensive lineman. Cameron Heyward his line is set at 3.5 combined tackles. I like that. I'm going to take the over, minus 130. He's hit this in actually 10 out of 13 games and 4 for the last 4. So very strong numbers there. 20 tackles over the last 4 games. So he's been rolling all gas those last 4 with a nice clean average of 5. As a whole, on the whole season, he's averaging 4.15 tackles a game, which, of course, all we need is 4. So he's a little bit over that marker. That's a good average. He's had 4 top 10 matchups in the last 4 games, and he's going to keep it rolling. Perhaps, actually, this matchup versus Philly is the best of all when we're talking about tackles given to the opposing defensive lineman. Philadelphia gives up almost 20. They're sitting just under at 19.5 tackles given up to defensive linemen, which is great news for Cameron Heyward, TJ Watt, Highsmith, but specifically when we're looking at the tackle category, Cameron Heyward's been the breadwinner out of those 3. Of course, Highsmith is just coming back. He's had dealt with injuries, but Cam Heyward has made good on this last 4 out of 4 and 10 out of 13. So in a juicy matchup, this nakobedean and Cameron Heyward, this Keystone Classic here in Philadelphia, in Philadelphia, but in Pennsylvania is going to be a great matchup. I like both of these picks here. My fourth pick is Buddabaker over 8.5 combined tackles at minus 110 versus New England. Buddabaker, as a matter of fact, is second in the NFL in combined tackles, second as a defensive back, which is really impressive. Only Zaire Franklin has more tackles, 3 more tackles. Buddabaker in 13 games is sitting at 132, so nice average there, a little bit over 10 a game, which is what we're going to need. We really need 9, but 10 would be nice. He's hit 9 tackles, 7 out of 13 games this year, and 2 of the last 4. Week 14, last week, he had a top 6 matchup. He had a crazy stat line, 18 tackles versus Seattle. And yes, this was a top 5 matchup. Top 6 matchup versus Seattle, but 18 tackles. I mean, that's the type of player that Buddabaker is. Week 15, he gets New England, who's given up actually 4 more tackles to the safety over the last 3 games. So if you look at it as a whole, New England is a downgrade of a matchup. They're kind of middle of the road. But the last 3 games specifically, I don't know what's in the water there, but New England is actually, giving up 4 more tackles to safeties than Seattle was. So if you think Seattle was a good matchup, I can't wait to see Buddabaker here in Week 15 versus New England. Week 13, Nick Cross, who is another great tackle, volume defensive back for Indianapolis. For comparison, he played New England. He had 9 tackles in that game, so that's what we need. If Nick Cross can do it, I'm pretty sure Buddabaker can too. So he's on par. Things are adding up here. So I really like this line. Buddabaker, he's been rolling a bunch of double-digit tackle games. He leads his team in tackles as a safety. And I expect this great matchup to, be plenty fruitful. I don't expect 18 tackles, but we can get 9 or 10 and get by with this minus 110 line. So Buddabaker over 8.5 tackles. Finally, for my last one, I want to give you a plus pick. I'm going back to the well. I wish Axton was here. He'd be proud of me. Tremaine Edmunds under 7.5 combined tackles at plus 100. This is hit in 9 out of 13 games. He did have 8 tackles in a blowout loss last week versus San Francisco, which skews the numbers a little bit. I mean, still 9 out of 13 is pretty darn good. But last week, 8 tackles. He would have made good on this marker, which would be bad for us. But the caveat is that he was playing a blowout versus the 49ers. They were just running the ball like crazy. And, this matchup at one point week 15, he gets a matchup versus Minnesota. Axton and I, numerous times we were poaching that matchup. We loved it. Minnesota was so plentiful, so fruitful, giving out tackles to linebackers, but not anymore. Over the last 3 games, Minnesota has dwindled down to only allowing 12.7 tackles a game to linebackers, which is actually over the last 3 games the 4th worst in the NFL. So combined, which is sad, horrible to see. But we actually have an edge up on the books here. I think they might think this is when you look at it as a whole, Minnesota is top 10 allowing tackles to linebackers, just not as of recent. So let's keep riding this wave. Tremaine Edmunds, maybe he gets 6 or 7, but I don't see 8 tackles here, even in a good on paper matchup as a whole. So last pick, Tremaine Edmunds, once again, under 7.5 combined tackles for plus 100. I want to thank you for coming back, hearing me out. Thank you to all those viewers and subscribers. If you are not already subscribed, you like what you heard on this video, go to idpplus.com/membership and use the promo code PROPS. And when you become a member, you will get 20% off on your subscription. So once again, idpplus.com/membership, hit enter, and then the promo code at checkout is PROPS. Until next time, best of luck in your betting this weekend. Best of luck in your fantasy matchups. And as always, good luck. Thank you for tuning in here on IDP Plus Trends and IDP Plus Bets.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.